Hi, I'm Jeff with Magnitude 10 Comics. Welcome back if you're a subscriber, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. This video is a little different. The topic of this video is grading comic books. This is a copy of the Overstreet grading guide, and this was developed by Robert Overstreet, who also did the pricing guides for many decades and still does. A lot of this has moved online. As some of you may know, there are professional grading companies like CGC that will assign a grade from 0 to 10. In the early days of comic book collecting, there were nomenclatures like good, fair, fine, mint, and over time, a number system from 0 to 10 developed. 10 being a gem mint, which is like, oh my gosh, this is beyond mint, like finding the most perfect diamond in the world. Of the, not even necessarily exists for a particular comic book, to point 5, which is incomplete. The back cover could be missing, the front cover could be missing, a page could be missing. But that comic book can be graded and kept and would have some value. For example, um, here is an old issue of Blackhawk, and the cover completely separated. Now, that would be towards the very low end of the scale, versus this graded comic book, for example, is at the high end, 9.4 being mint and 9.6 being above mint. And so that last 9 to 10 grade goes in increments, and we'll be able to talk a little bit about what's the methodology for assigning 9.2 versus 9.8, and then anywhere in between. Okay, so where I'd like to start is I have several examples. I pulled out a couple modern books, some Bronze Age books, including a couple of giant size, thick square bounds. And I have them in the other room, 4 Golden Age books that we can take a look at as we go and discuss grading, assigning a grade. Now, of course, the grade of a comic book is often tied to the value or the price that's assigned in selling or trading a comic book. The price or the sale value, the sale price of a comic book is a decision between the seller and the buyer. The seller may always want to ask more or less than price on grade. So associated with the grade, there are price guides that establish a price for the grade that was assigned for that comic book. So we'll take a look at that as well. But always remember that ultimately what a comic book is valued or sold for depends on what someone is willing to pay for it at the end of an actual sale and transaction. So there is accumulated data, for example, with CGC, And that database of sales information is often used to help in kind of deciding what is a fair market price once a grade is established or agreed upon. Okay, so I think the first place to start in my approach is depending on the generation of comic book, because I will say that they are different. Golden Age comic books are different than modern comic books. They are a different size. They have a different number of pages. Um, the paper type is different. So for a modern book, almost any modern book is printed on heavier, more magazine style slick paper, and they are almost always, even if they weren't necessarily protected in a bag and board, they often are higher grade. Um, this is an example of something that's a little different. It is constructed different. The cover is glued around this thick set of pages, and it covers the staples. The staples are bent over and can be seen under the front of the book. Let's take a look at. I don't want to overextend the cover, but you might be able to just see if I gently expose, the staples are through the paper, and then this wraparound cover is glued onto the edges. Whereas in, say, this more standard comic book, the staples, the cover is wrapped around the folded pages, and the staples go through the centerfold halfway through the book. Okay. So now, of course, when you're handling books, you want your hands to be clean, oil free. So, but generally, washing them with soap, drying them, you're fine. If you feel more comfortable, and when I started with an expensive book, I would put gloves on just to be careful. Also, let me show you. For older books, it can help to have a magnifying I'll have to show this in a minute, but I have a light ring with a magnifying lens, or you can, use a handheld uh, magnification glass. And I also, on occasion, if I need to, I'll use this little tool, the blunt end of this tool, to kind of lift up on the edges and kind of check what's going on, if something is dangling, or just depending, if I need to kind of gently lift that cover up, with the tool to open the book or something like that. I can use it, just as I go around the edge of the book and make mental notes. Okay, so I think I'm going to switch now to my neck cam. Okay, and with the neck cam, we'll be able to take a top-down look at specific books. And we'll start with a modern, a Bronze Age, and a Golden Age, and go into detail of trying to assign a grade. And then we'll circle back to the desk cam to look at price guides once we've decided on a grade for each comic book. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm switched over to my neck cam, and here are 3 examples of a modern, bronze, and golden age comic book. Let's start with this issue of The Incredible Hulk. It is a modern book. Like we noted earlier, this is more of a magazine slick paper. It's heavier and coated. Although the comic book does have staples, they're fine. There's a slight curl that has left a indentation line, a curl line, and this is a black cover, so it does show up pretty easily if there's any color breaks, of which like this corner, that corner. So it's not a gem mint by any means. It's not even a mint copy, but it's certainly a very fine copy. Okay, so because this is I already know ahead of time that this is a very inexpensive book, I'm comfortable with just putting this here. And also the thing to keep in mind is, you know, if you're grading comic books for trading or selling, you're probably not going to want to spend an inordinate amount of time poring over and laboring over. It's high grade, it's not mid grade, it's not low grade. Do you need to figure out if it's 9.8? No, because maybe at most you would offer this comic book for somewhere around $3 in a bag and board. So you know, that's my approach. If you have a different approach, I definitely more than happy for you all to comment, because that's what the point of this video is. So please do. And you know, also I'll try to respond to your comments you know, that you leave here on this video. So okay, so that's modern books. And for most modern books, now if it's an extremely expensive one, the same principles would apply. If you think that you might be in the 9 to 10 range, you can do a system where, like that corner fold, that corner abrasion, this corner abrasion, this spine tick. But I'll tell you, this roll is the biggest problem. That immediately kicks it out of the mint category. But suppose that weren't there, you could count these little minor defects, assign, you know, deduct 0.1 for each one, and if you or 0.2, and if you quickly find more than 4 or 5 of the tiniest defects, it's no longer a 9 or 9.2, 9.4 candidate. Okay, if it has more than 10 the tiniest imperfections, that would kick it out of the mint category. Okay, and when you're in a store or something, or you're evaluating it, you can always ask the store owner or the dealer to let you take a closer look at the book. Now, of course, for a $1 book, that's not really practical. So just do your best to kind of take a look at the book through the bag and board. And as long as you don't see a chunk missing or something going on, depending on how much time is available, I would suggest, you know, at your local store, you can learn how they approach things and how, you know, how good of a job they do to assigning something, or even putting it out for sale in this case, if it has a major defect. They might mark it as such or let you know in one way or another, and then that makes it easier, or help you once you go to the counter with a stack of books to just make sure that you're not purchasing something. You can just ask, and I'm sure that they would be more than happy to help answer any question regarding the condition of the books that you're going to purchase. Okay, I think I'm going to move on now from this book, and we'll move on to this copy of Werewolf by Night. Okay, so the first thing that you want to check is that the cover is attached, that the page count is right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So here is the middle of the book. There are the staples. The staples are clean. Let's take a look. So they're tight. There's no problems as far as rust or rust migration or even discoloration. Everything is tight. There's, then just flipping through the rest. So the page count is right. Let me zoom back out. There are no major flaws of a missing chunk or a torn page. So now we can just kind of inspect the cover. Now, this is a little bit of dirt, probably from not being in a bag and board and rubbing up against other comic books at some point. There is a little chip up here. There is a divot in the front cover there. And there's a little bit of spine stress, including, a color break here. So, you can kind of roughly count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's what I would say like a little bend, a very minor bend there. This corner has been, you can see the fold line there, which is minor. And that corner is moderate. So this is definitely not mint. It's not low grade. So this is where it gets a little more difficult, because in the mid-grade range, and by comparison, so having looked at literally thousands of books and attempted to assign a grade to literally thousands of books, I would place this around a 7.0. Okay, so now this is where it can get, somewhat contentious, but with the number and severity of the defects, I think this is around a 7.0, just, making it into that high grade range. And so, up to a 4, very good, is low grade, or, maybe below a 4 is low grade, from 4 to 7 is mid grade, 4, 5, or 6, and then 7, 8, 9 is high grade. So I'm going to assign this a 7.0 grade. Okay. Let me switch over and we'll take a look at this Golden Age Batman comic book from the 1940s. Okay, because a comic book like this could be worth hundreds, possibly thousands of dollars, I am going to go ahead and wear gloves to handle it. As you can kind of hear, it is in a Mylar. It is a larger format and a higher page count. So we're going to take it out of the bag, set the board to one side, and we're going to do our first checks. We're going to check that, okay, and okay, we already see a tear there, and they are just barely hanging on, but the cover is under the staple, and so is that attached, detached? I would say it's just barely attached. And then I've already flipped through this book before I put it on film, so I know that it is not missing any pieces. There is a tear here. This is the centerfold. The staples are in good shape. This is just a bindery defect, which doesn't count against the book, especially a Golden Age book, but really any book in a way. It's just more common that the machines and such, like it, it's a little bit off center where the staple, but that I'm sure was how it was done. Now this is more just ink from the surrounding pages as opposed to any rust or color migration. So the book is, as you can see, just barely holding on to those staples, but they are attached. Now this here, and like I said, I have inspected this particular book before, I believe is something that was laid on there. Maybe it was an attempt to it seems like that another piece of paper at some point, I mean, this comic book is like going on 80 years old. So at some point in its lifetime, another piece of paper might have been in here that, I don't know if it was intentional, but that looks like another layer of paper that somehow adhered there. And it, there could have been a spill, and after it dried, that little chunk was attached there. Okay, moving on, there's not a full length crease, but there's a crease in the cover. There's some moderate damage to the spine, not just around the staples, but also here at this point. The spine is intact, and there's not really even any splitting. So this is low grade, but and it's not a 0.5. I don't think it's even a 1, but is it a 4? Let's take a closer look back at the dust cam at some of the conditions, and we'll assign a grade as closely as we can. I'm going to say it's around a 3 plus or minus, but let's take a closer look as to why I'm saying that. Okay, first off, I'll talk a little bit about bags and boards. So when you have a little bit more expensive comic book that you're planning, that's a collectible, you want to pretty much as quickly as possible get it inside of a bag and board. Now, when you put it in a box, you want to put it vertical, and I like to avoid tape at all costs. I would prefer to either tuck a flap in and store it as such and just have no tape adhesive residue at all. Or in this case, this is a resealable bag. Once you lift this, sorry, let me get that back in the camera. Once you lift this strip, there's adhesive underneath, and the idea is that you can open and close. But just the presence of adhesive, and certainly with Scotch tape, anywhere around, I don't want it. I don't want it on the bag. I don't want it, period. Like I said, I would prefer to just not even use Scotch tape when I'm storing it. Now, some people put their comic books back to back like such, so that the spines are alternating, so that if they're compressed in the box, that they don't develop that spine roll. There's some thinking that over time that keeps the books from developing spine roll. But, you know, a good bag and board will help, and keep it in a box in a dark area. If you want to put it on display, be careful of sunlight or ultraviolet that would bleach out the color on the cover. Use a UV coated display, something with UV protection or available, or keep it in a room where there's no direct sunlight falling on the book for very long. You don't want to leave it for years at a time being hit by the sun. It'll bleach out the color. Okay, when you take it in and out, you want to be careful. You want to slide the book in and out, and then lift it off the board to hold the book. Make sure you support the spine so that you don't bend it and create a crease. Be careful that you don't grab a corner. Like you can probably already see there are pulls here where someone's pulled. And I suspect that at some point in the lifetime of this comic book, it was pressed in order to train and flatten the paper to be flat and smooth and to take out wrinkles. It's definitely possible that happened. It's hard to know if you're not the one that did it yourself or have a record of whether or not it's been pressed or not. In the reverse, you can put, if the bag is loose enough, you can try to go all at once, but typically I will put the board into the bag first, okay? And you come at it at an angle, put the first corner in, then tilt it. Once you're in, it slides right in. And then the same with the comic book. Come at an angle, make sure that you're in, be careful that you know of the corner, and slide the comic book in. And now it's ready for storage. If you are taking the book in and out with, annually or something, you might just use a poly bag. At some point, if it's valuable enough and you can afford it, you might want to put it in a Mylar, which is a thicker type of plastic and more acid-free and archival. Now, these books do breathe humidity in and out, and so that's okay. But you do want to keep them stored somewhere where they're safe from any moisture, not on a basement floor where they could get wet or the moisture could creep up through the cardboard box, where you don't have problems with insects, rodents, naturally, any dust, dirt, debris, chance of fire. I mean, that's the safest place to store your comic books. And you want to check on them, every so often. You can, if you have a lot, you can, take some samples out of the box and just check the condition. If they were stored around the same time, then, just a sample should tell you. And maybe you need to replace the bags every so often. But if they're stored and not being taken in and out and handled, they can, I'm sure you could have just poly bags for a very long time, possibly decades, depending on the conditions of the storage. How much the temperature swing, how hot it got, and how much of a swing in humidity, how damp and dry it got year over year. Okay, let's take a closer look and try to assign a grade to this particular comic book.